Do you believe that miracles still happen in this day and age? A letter reached Jonathan Roumie, the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen, and what he did next forever changed the life of an entire family. Today, you're about to discover how a simple act of compassion transformed into something that defied medicine itself and united millions of people around the world in an unparalleled global prayer movement. But what truly transpired in that hospital when the lights began to flicker mysteriously? And why to this day can physicians not scientifically account for what they witnessed? Brace yourself for a true story that will rekindle your faith and demonstrate that God still works through hearts willing to serve. The corridor of the pediatric hospital reverberated with the muffled sound of hurried footsteps and the unrelenting drone of medical equipment. In room 213, 9-year-old Emma Grace Mitchell lay in a hospital bed, enveloped by clear tubes and monitors that flickered with unwavering regularity. Her skin, once flushed with vitality, now bore a pallor that stood in stark contrast to her dark blonde hair fanned out across the white pillow. 3 months prior, she had been admitted with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, an aggressive form of the disease that had sapped her energy and redefined her childhood existence as a daily battle for survival. "Mommy, why can't I go home today?" Emma asked in a faint voice, her blue eyes still alight with a flicker of childlike hope fixed on her mother. Sarah Mitchell, 35, seated in the chair beside the bed, clutched her daughter's small, cold hand firmly as she strove to suppress the tears that relentlessly welled up. Her brown hair was pulled back into a disheveled bun, the result of countless restless nights in the hospital, and her simple clothes betrayed the toll of a life forsaken in devotion to her ailing child. Beside her, Michael Mitchell, a 40-year-old man with unshaven stubble and eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion, scrutinized every flicker on the monitors as if hoping to discern a message of hope in the numbers that danced across the screen. Tyler, Emma's younger brother, merely 6 years old, amused himself silently on the floor, with some toys brought from home, occasionally casting a worried glance at his sister in the bed. "Daddy, Emma's going to get well soon, isn't she?" Tyler murmured, breaking the oppressive silence that permeated the room. Dr. James Anderson, a seasoned physician of 52 with silvering hair and spectacles that perpetually slipped down his nose, entered the room with deliberate strides and an expression Sarah had come to dread. He carried a briefcase containing lab results and reports, documents that held little Emma's fate, couched in medical terminology the family could barely grasp. During the 3 months of her hospitalization, Dr. Anderson had become more than a physician to the Mitchell family. He served as the conduit between hope and the stark reality that unfolded daily. His trembling hands flicked through the papers as he searched for the right words to convey what everyone already suspected, but no one wished to hear. "I need to speak with you outside," as the doctor said, addressing the parents, his tone unable to conceal the gravity of the situation. In the cold hospital corridor, away from the innocent ears of Emma and Tyler, Dr. Anderson took a deep breath before delivering the verdict that would forever alter the lives of the Mitchell family. The latest tests revealed that the leukemia had spread more aggressively than anticipated, resisting all available treatments, including the most recent chemotherapy, which had been their last hope. The malignant white blood cells had completely infiltrated the girl's bone marrow, and her platelet count was perilously low, indicating that her tiny body was losing the battle against the relentless disease. Sarah clutched her husband's arm tightly as the doctor explained there were no more medical protocols to attempt, no new experimental drug that could reverse the devastating prognosis. "How much time does she have, doctor?" Michael asked, his voice choked with emotion, already dreading the impending answer. The ensuing silence seemed to stretch into an eternity before Dr. Anderson responded with the brutal honesty the situation demanded. Based on his 20 years of experience treating children with leukemia, and considering the accelerated progression of the disease evident in the late tests, he estimated Emma had between 2 to 4 weeks to live, perhaps less if complications such as opportunistic infections or internal hemorrhaging arose. The family needed to prepare for the inevitable and consider palliative care to ensure the child's utmost comfort in her remaining days. Sarah collapsed into her husband's arms, her sobs echoing down the corridor as Michael struggled to process the devastating information he had just received. "How are we going to tell her?" Sarah whispered through her tears, thinking of their daughter who still believed she would soon be playing in their backyard again. Back in the room, Emma had picked up the tablet the nurse always made available for children to distract themselves during the long days of hospitalization. With trembling fingers, she navigated through the episodes of The Chosen, a series she had discovered weeks prior and which had become her sanctuary during her most acute moments of pain and discomfort. The girl's eyes would light up every time Jonathan Roumie appeared on screen portraying Jesus Christ, and she was captivated by the tender and compassionate manner in which he depicted the Savior. Emma had watched the first season thrice and was now on the second, absorbing every word, every gesture, every nuance of compassion the actor conveyed through the character. "Mommy, look how kind Jesus is to children," Emma exclaimed, pointing to the screen where Jesus blessed a sick child in the episode. Sarah and Michael re-entered the room, attempting to conceal the traces of tears on their faces, forcing smiles that failed to reach their devastated eyes. Emma, with the heightened intuition often developed by ailing children, immediately sensed a shift in her parents' demeanor, but chose to focus on the series still playing on the tablet. Tyler approached his sister's bed and carefully climbed up to sit beside her, watching alongside her as scenes unfolded where Jesus performed miracles and healed the infirm. The family remained silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts as they watched the episode where Jesus resurrected Jairus' daughter, a narrative that seemed to resonate painfully with the reality they were enduring. "Mom, does Jesus still perform miracles like in the series?" Emma suddenly inquired, turning to look directly into her mother's eyes with a gravity unbefitting her age. Emma's innocent query struck Sarah like a lightning bolt, and she felt tears threaten to well up again as she searched for a response that might offer her daughter some solace without dissembling about the gravity of their situation. Michael moved closer to the bed and held his daughter's hand, his gaze meeting Sarah's in a moment of silent communion between parents sharing an identical, ineffable grief. The family's faith had been severely tested in recent months, oscillating between moments of fleeting hope and utter despair. Yet Emma's heartfelt question underscored a profound need to believe in something greater than medicine. Tyler clasped his sister's arm and softly whispered that he too believed Jesus still performed miracles, especially for good children like her. "I know he still watches over us, my dear," Sarah finally replied, her voice imbued with a faith she was desperately striving to rebuild. Emma shifted her gaze back to the tablet, pausing the episode precisely as Jonathan Roumie, portraying Jesus, extended his hands to heal a sick person. She gently touched the screen with her finger, tracing the contours of the actor's benevolent face, and a small yet genuine smile graced her pale lips. For several minutes, she remained captivated by the still image, as if imprinting every detail, every expression of love and compassion emanating from Jonathan Roumie's eyes. Tyler noticed his sister's absorption and inquired about the man who made Jesus seem so real on television, to which Emma responded that he was a very special actor who managed to convey Jesus' true essence. "Do you know what I'd wish for more than anything in the world?" Emma softly asked, still gazing at the pause screen. "I'd like to meet this man who plays Jesus, to ask him if Jesus still remembers children like me." The girl's simple yet profound request elicited a deep silence in the room, as Sarah and Michael exchanged glances heavy with unspoken meaning. It was a seemingly impossible wish. How could an ordinary family from a small town possibly contact a renowned Hollywood actor? Yet there was something in the way Emma had voiced her desire that profoundly resonated with her parents. Sarah knew that time was of the essence, and that any dream or desire of Emma's needed to be taken to heart, no matter how daunting its realization might appear. Michael nodded almost imperceptibly to his wife, a gesture that conveyed his resolve to attempt the impossible for their daughter. "We will try, my love," Sarah promised, kneeling beside the bed and cradling Emma's face in her hands. "We will do everything within our power to make this wish of yours come true." That very night, after Emma and Tyler had drifted off to sleep, Sarah and Michael remained awake in the darkened hospital room, their cell phones casting a glow on their weary faces as they desperately scoured for any means to contact Jonathan Roumie or the production of The Chosen. They drafted emails to talent agencies, production studios, official social media pages, and any other viable channel they could unearth online. Sarah penned a poignant letter recounting Emma's story, her illness, her unwavering faith, and her fervent wish to meet the man who portrayed Jesus with such authenticity and love. Michael supplemented the letter with medical details and the exigency of the situation, explaining that time was exceedingly limited and that this encounter could be the last wellspring of joy for their daughter. "Someone has to read this," Sarah murmured as she sent the 10th message of the night. "Someone has to care enough to help our girl." Over the next 3 days, the Mitchell family alternated between caring for Emma at the hospital and relentlessly seeking a way to contact Jonathan Roumie. Sarah went so far as to call churches in Los Angeles, hoping a pastor might have connections to the Catholic actor portraying Jesus in the series. Michael reached out to the chosen fans in online groups, pleading for any information that could lead to the actor. Emma, meanwhile, continued to watch the episodes incessantly, her physical condition visibly deteriorating each day, yet her resolve to meet Jonathan remained steadfast. Tyler drew pictures of Jesus to give to the man on TV when he came to visit Emma, a childlike faith that shattered his parents' hearts. "Mommy, he's coming. I know he is," Emma would say every night before falling asleep, clutching her tablet to her chest as if it were a sacred talisman. On the third night, as Sarah responded to more emails from people who had offered assistance after their story had disseminated across social media, Emma's medical equipment alarms began to blare frantically. Nurses rushed into the room while Michael woke Tyler and led him outside, shielding the boy from the terrifying sight of his sister gasping for breath. Sarah held Emma's hand as the medical team worked frantically to stabilize her vital signs, adjusting medications and oxygen while the figures on the monitors danced precariously. Dr. Anderson arrived minutes later, his somber expression confirming the family's gravest fears as he quickly reviewed the equipment data. "She's entering the terminal phase," he whispered to Sarah, his words piercing like daggers through the desperate mother's heart. When Emma had finally stabilized and drifted back to sleep, Dr. Anderson summoned Sarah and Michael for a private conversation in the hallway. His weary eyes, though reflecting decades of experience delivering devastating news to shattered families, still struggled to find the right words to convey the brutal reality that lay before them. Recent examinations revealed Emma's body was beginning to fail systemically, and crises like the one that had just transpired would become increasingly frequent and severe. Based on his observations from years of treating similar cases, his medical expertise led him to a terrifying conclusion he needed to impart to the parents. "She has hours, perhaps a day," he finally articulated, shaking his head despairingly as the words reverberated through the empty corridor like a definitive sentence. The set of The Chosen buzzed with the concentrated energy of a professional production in full swing, warm lights casting an ethereal glow that transformed the modern backdrop into a convincing portrayal of ancient Galilee. Jonathan Roumie, at 51 and fully embodying Jesus Christ with long brown hair, a meticulously trimmed beard, and an authentic beige tunic, stood at the heart of a scene depicting Jesus blessing ailing children. Through this sacred role, he had unearthed his true purpose as an actor, spiritually connecting with the character in a manner that transcended mere performance. Cameras meticulously captured every delicate gesture, every expression of unconditional love he conveyed through Jesus' eyes, as the crew worked silently around him, revering the sacrosanct nature of the moment. "Lord, help me to honor your presence through this work. May my interpretation touch hearts and instill hope in those who watch," Jonathan murmured in silent prayer before each take. Dallas Jenkins, the series' visionary director, observed intently via the monitors as Jonathan interacted with the child actors, his direction rendered almost superfluous by the sheer naturalness with which Jonathan embodied the essence of Christ. The production team had learned to operate in a distinct environment when Jonathan was on set as Jesus, acknowledging they were participating in something far more profound than mere television entertainment. The technicians meticulously calibrated their equipment to capture every subtle inflection of Jonathan's gentle voice, while the camera operators moved with a palpable reverence, keenly aware they were documenting a portrayal destined to resonate with millions. Production assistant Marcus Webb, a young man tasked with managing cast correspondence, approached unobtrusively, clutching a folder brimming with fan mail, his expression betraying an unusual urgency. "Jonathan, pardon the interruption, but this just arrived for you. This one appears distinct, truly pressing," Marcus murmured in a hushed tone, extending a particular letter that had singularly captured his notice. Jonathan accepted the letter, with hands still made up to resemble those of Jesus, the unadorned envelope starkly contrasting with the elaborate cinematic milieu, and instantly sensed an anomalous energy emanating from that specific piece of correspondence. The paper was faintly creased, attesting to urgent, emotional handling, and the handwriting evinced signs of having been penned under considerable duress, with some words smudged by tears. With a delicate reverence, Jonathan unfolded the letter and began to read the desperate pleas of Sarah Mitchell, each sentence imbued with the profound anguish of a mother confronting the impending loss of her daughter. As he read, his facial expression began a gradual metamorphosis, shifting from professional curiosity to a poignant comprehension of the devastating plight being confided in him. The camera, still rolling, inadvertently captured the subtle yet profound shift in his gaze, chronicling the precise instant Jonathan confronted a reality resonating profoundly with the Christic mission he portrayed daily. "My God, this child is dying and wishes to meet me," Jonathan whispered, his voice quavering as he read about Emma Grace Mitchell and her dying wish. The perusal of the letter persisted for several tense minutes, during which Jonathan absorbed every grim detail of Emma's struggle with leukemia, the family's devout viewership of The Chosen as a source of solace, and the girl's simple yet profound desire to meet the man who imbued Jesus with life on screen. Dallas Jenkins and the crew observed in respectful silence as Jonathan processed the unfolding revelation, noting the faint tremble in his hands and the deliberate cadence of his breathing. The atmosphere on set palpably shifted, as if a divine presence had descended upon the environment, transforming a mere moment of cinematic production into something sacred and profoundly personal. Jonathan carefully folded the letter and clutched it to his chest, his eyes closed in silent prayer, before turning to face the entire crew with an unprecedented resolve. "We need to halt filming. There's something I must do immediately," Jonathan declared with a gentle but undeniable authority, his voice imbued with the gravity of a decision he knew was guided by something greater than his own will. Dallas Jenkins, accustomed to the vagaries of producing a series about Jesus Christ, yet never having encountered a situation quite like this, approached Jonathan with a blend of professional concern and human curiosity. The crew remained hushed, respecting the moment, but clearly questioning what could have prompted such a dramatic reaction from their lead actor, as cameras were powered down and the studio lights gradually dimmed. Jonathan extended the letter for Dallas to read, keenly observing the director's expression as he absorbed the same devastating information. And when Dallas finished reading, their eyes met in a moment of shared understanding of the situation's profound magnitude. "A child is dying, Dallas. She has terminal leukemia, and her dying wishes to meet me because I portray Jesus. I cannot remain here merely portraying Christ while a real child genuinely needs me," Jonathan explained, his voice laden with an emotion that transcended his professional performance. The decision was made instantly, without hesitation or regard for the financial implications, because both Jonathan and Dallas comprehended they were confronting a moment that would define their very souls as compassionate human beings. Jonathan carefully shed his Jesus portrayal, removing the tunic and allowing the makeup artist to cleanse his face, all the while maintaining an inner reverence that had become an intrinsic part of his identity. The team swiftly mobilized to reconfigure the shooting schedule, while Marcus Webb worked to locate contact information for the Mitchell family and arrange immediate transport to the hospital where Emma was admitted. Dallas personally authorized the use of the production's private jet, comprehending that time was quite literally a matter of life and death, and that every lost minute could mean the difference between fulfilling a child's dying wish or arriving too late. "I'll call the hospital and make all the arrangements. You need to get to her as quickly as possible," Dallas said, already dialing numbers on his mobile phone. The journey from Los Angeles to the hospital where Emma was admitted became a race against time, with Jonathan spending the 3-hour flight in profound prayer and spiritual preparation for what would be one of the most significant encounters of his life. During the flight, he received regular updates on Emma's condition via direct calls from the hospital, each medical report confirming the extreme urgency of the situation and the very real possibility that the girl might not survive until his arrival. Jonathan utilized the time on the plane to pray intensely, imploring divine wisdom to know precisely what to say and do when he finally met Emma, and beseeching God to allow his presence to bring some solace to a family in unspeakable anguish. The pilot, briefed on the critical nature of the mission, flew at maximum permissible speed, while a hospital security team discreetly coordinated his arrival to ensure complete privacy. Lord Jesus, use me as your instrument. May your presence be felt through me in this moment of desperate need, Jonathan prayed continuously throughout the journey. The pediatric hospital had meticulously prepared for Jonathan Roumie's unanticipated arrival, with the administration covertly coordinating to ensure the encounter would transpire without external interference. When Jonathan finally reached room 213, still in unassuming travel attire but exuding an aura of peace and compassion, he encountered a scene that profoundly moved his heart. Emma, visibly frail, yet with eyes alight with anticipation, was watching The Chosen on a tablet while her family anxiously gathered around her bedside. Sarah Mitchell was the first to spot him at the doorway, her immediate reaction being to clasp her hands over her mouth in utter disbelief, unable to fathom that her fervent prayers had been answered in such a miraculous fashion. Michael firmly gripped his wife's shoulder as he processed the reality that the man his daughter adored was truly there, in the flesh, bringing a beacon of hope to what had felt like an utterly dire moment. Emma, darling, someone very special has come to visit you. It's the man you wanted to meet, the Jonathan who plays Jesus in the series, Sarah uttered, her voice choked with emotion. Emma slowly turned her head toward the door, her blue eyes widening in sheer incredulity as she saw Jonathan Roumie standing there, a gentle smile illuminating his face as he carefully approached the bedside. The moment brimmed with such intense, almost palpable emotion, with tears simultaneously welling up in the eyes of everyone present in the room, including Jonathan, who was immediately touched by the girl's evident fragility juxtaposed with the radiant strength of her faith. Emma extended a trembling hand towards Jonathan, who gently clasped it in his own, forging an immediate connection that transcended words and pierced directly into both their hearts. Tyler watched in reverent silence, holding the drawings of Jesus he had made and awaiting the opportune moment to present them to their special visitor. "You really came. I knew Jesus would send you to me," Emma whispered, her voice faint yet brimming with awe. Having spent a precious hour conversing with Emma about faith, hope, and the unconditional love of Christ, Jonathan requested a private conversation with Dr. Anderson to fully grasp the medical situation and ascertain the precise prognosis for the girl. The hospital corridor resonated with the gravity of the ensuing conversation as the seasoned physician explained with stark candor that all avenues of modern medicine had been exhausted, and that Emma's leukemia had progressed beyond any possibility of reversal through conventional treatments. Jonathan listened to every word with undivided attention, processing the information not merely as a compassionate visitor, but as someone who had dedicated years of his life to studying and portraying the miraculous essence of Jesus Christ, understanding that he was encountering precisely the kind of situation where Christ invariably intervened with divine power. Dr. Anderson found himself peculiarly moved by Jonathan's serene presence and the manner in which he received devastating news with a peace that defied logical explanation. "There is nothing more we can do medically," the doctor admitted with profound regret, while Jonathan responded, "Then let us seek a miracle," with a conviction that astonished even himself. When Jonathan left the hospital 2 hours later, carrying with him the indelible image of Emma clutching her drawings of Jesus, he immediately retrieved his mobile phone and began to mobilize a global network of faith that would extend far beyond his expectations. His social media posts, penned with passionate urgency and emotional authenticity, swiftly propagated through millions of The Chosen followers, Christian communities worldwide, and individuals of all denominations who were profoundly moved by the simple yet potent narrative of a young girl confronting mortality with unyielding faith. Jonathan wrote about Emma not as a celebrity seeking attention, but as a servant of Christ soliciting collective intercession, sharing just enough detail to stir hearts without infringing upon the family's privacy. Within minutes, the posts were being shared exponentially, generating a wave of prayer that spanned continents, connecting believers in a unified current of faith centered on a single small child fighting for her life. Please unite with me in prayer for Emma Mitchell. Christ still performs miracles when we gather in His name, Jonathan wrote in his primary post. Precisely at the moment when millions worldwide began to kneel in prayer for Emma Mitchell, a series of inexplicable events commenced at the hospital where she was admitted, starting with a mysterious flicker of lights that swept through the entire edifice like an inexplicable wave of energy. The hospital's electrical systems experienced a momentary fluctuation, causing medical monitors to flash simultaneously, fluorescent lights to flicker in sequence, and life support equipment to emit recalibration beeps before reverting to normal operation. The nurse in charge of the night shift, a seasoned professional who had witnessed all manner of medical emergencies, paused in the corridor and surveyed her surroundings with bewilderment, unable to technically account for what she had just observed. Other members of the medical staff emerged from various rooms, all remarking on the same peculiar phenomenon that had simultaneously impacted the hospital's entire electrical system. Yet maintenance engineers were unable to pinpoint any fault or logical explanation. How peculiar in 15 years of working here? I've never witnessed anything quite like it, the nurse muttered to herself, gazing toward Emma's room. The pre-dawn hours brought with them a heavy stillness that hung over the pediatric hospital, broken only by the incessant hum of medical equipment and the hurried footsteps of the night staff responding to the desperate alarm echoing from room 213. Emma Grace Mitchell had fallen into a profound coma following the mysterious electrical incident, her tiny body contending with the leukemia that now seemed to have mustered renewed strength for its final assault. Sarah and Michael remained at her bedside, their hands clasped in fervent prayer as they watched their daughter struggle to breathe through the tubes that sustained her. Dr. Anderson worked frantically with his team, adjusting medications and monitoring vital signs that continued to decline perilously, each beep from the monitors echoing like an inexorable countdown. Lord, please don't take her yet. She's so small and has so much faith, Sarah whispered through her tears, clutching Emma's cold hand as if she could transfer her own life force to her daughter. Across town in the small church of St. Mary, where he had sought refuge to pray, far from the world's distractions, Jonathan Roumie knelt before the altar, illuminated solely by flickering candles, his soul crying out in desperate intercession for a child who had deeply touched his heart. He had spent the preceding 4 hours in ceaseless prayer, interspersed with fervent pleas and moments of contemplative silence, feeling the weight of millions globally who had spiritually united in that sacred moment. Through social media and prayer groups, an unprecedented wave of faith had swept across continents, with believers of all Christian denominations simultaneously kneeling in their homes, churches, and workplaces, all focused on a singular purpose, imploring God to save Emma Mitchell's life. Jonathan could feel the tangible presence of the Holy Spirit filling the empty church, a spiritual energy that seemed to connect him directly with every individual praying for the girl at that very moment. Father, if it is your will, manifest this miracle through our collective faith. Demonstrate to the world that you still act with power and love, Jonathan prayed, tears streaming down his face. At the hospital, Dr. Anderson called Sarah and Michael aside for a private conversation in the hallway, his somber expression confirming the parents' worst fears as he explained that Emma had entered the terminal stage of her illness and that medically nothing more could be done. Tests revealed that her vital organs were systematically failing, and based on his extensive experience with similar cases, he estimated she had at most a few hours left to live. Tyler slept fitfully in the chair beside his sister's bed, occasionally murmuring childlike prayers in his dreams, unaware of the gravity of the unfolding situation around him. The medical team had done everything humanly possible, but now all that remained was to wait and offer Emma the utmost comfort in her final moments. Sarah collapsed into her husband's arms when the doctor suggested they begin to consider bidding farewell to their daughter, preparing themselves for the inevitable that seemed to be rapidly approaching. "Doctor," Michael implored, his voice thick with desperation, "please keep trying. We still hold on to the belief that there might be hope. refusing to concede that his little Emma was on the verge of departure. Suddenly, in a moment that would be forever etched in the memory of all present, an otherworldly silence descended upon the entire hospital, as if time itself had paused to witness something extraordinary that was about to unfold. The cardiac monitors, which had been emitting irregular and concerning beeps, suddenly stabilized into a strong and steady rhythm, as Emma slowly opened her blue eyes for the first time in hours, breathing deeply without the assistance of oxygen tubes. Dr. Anderson rushed into the room and stood paralyzed upon witnessing something that completely contradicted everything he had learned in 20 years of medicine. Watching in utter shock as Emma sat up in bed and smiled faintly at her astonished parents. New tests were immediately performed, revealing that her white blood cell levels had inexplicably begun to normalize. Her platelet count was drastically increasing, and all indicators of organ failure had reversed in a manner that defied any known medical explanation. "How is this possible?" the doctor murmured to himself, repeatedly poring over the test results. "Mommy, I dreamed that Jesus was holding my hand," Emma said, her voice still weak but filled with peace. The ensuing weeks were marked by a miraculous recovery that left the entire medical team perplexed, with Emma gaining strength and energy each day, her hair beginning to grow back and her skin regaining the rosy hue of childhood. Follow-up examinations consistently confirmed that the leukemia was in complete remission, a reversal so rapid and total that Dr. Anderson decided to document the case for presentation at international medical conferences. Jonathan visited Emma 2 more times during her recovery, always accompanied by prayers of gratitude from the Mitchell family, who directly attributed the miracle to the actor's intercession and the global prayer chain he had mobilized. The story quickly spread through Christian communities, inspiring testimonies of renewed faith and strengthening the belief of millions in the power of collective prayer. "This child taught us that miracles still happen when we unite in faith," Jonathan declared in a later interview. 6 months later, Emma was freely running through the park near her home, playing with Tyler and other friends like any healthy 9-year-old child, without any sign of the illness that had almost claimed her life. During a special The Chosen event in her city, she ran toward Jonathan and hugged him tightly, whispering words into his ear that would forever touch the actor's heart. Dr. Anderson, present at the event as a special guest, publicly admitted before the audience that he could not scientifically explain what had happened to Emma, officially classifying her case as an inexplicable, spontaneous remission. "Thank you for introducing me to the real Jesus," Emma whispered to Jonathan during the hug. "Some call it a coincidence, others a miracle. But for Emma and her family, it was simply Jesus acting through the power of united faith." If the story of Emma and Jonathan Roumie resonated with your heart and demonstrated how the power of prayer can move mountains, don't forget to subscribe, like, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And tell me, have you ever experienced an inexplicable miracle? Or do you know someone who has? Do you believe that God still works through ordinary individuals to achieve the extraordinary? Share your experience of faith in the comments, and together let's spread hope to those who need it most. May Jesus bless your life abundantly.